This Tuvok moment in Star Trek. Voyager always brings a tear to my eye. Tim Russ's Star Trek. Voyager character was often difficult to read because he was a Vulcan, but he showed his buried feelings in brilliantly subtle ways, and one of those displays always chokes me up when I watch it. Tuvok is a key member of the crew in every season of Star Trek, Voyager. His logical mind and stoic nature made him a perfect chief of security aboard the show's titular vessel. However, his Vulcan demeanor also ended up ruffling a few feathers throughout the show, even when he didn't mean to. Ethan Phillips's Neelix is another Star Trek, Voyager character who is present throughout the show, with his departure in the final season marking the start of the story drawing to a close. His exit comes in Star Trek, Voyager Season 7, Episode 23, Homestead. Neelix begins the episode trying to get Tuvok to dance at a function the Talaxian is holding in the mess hall. Tuvok declines, but Phillips's character makes a bold prediction later on that he'll one day see the Vulcan dance. Surprisingly, it comes true at the end of Homestead. It's a brief but poignant moment. Sure, it isn't the most impassioned dance, but what it represents is far more than what it actually is. There was a time when Tuvok would have let Neelix leave the ship without making such a coy little joke. The wiggle of his foot is enough to bring a look of unbridled joy to Neelix's face, as he probably never truly believed his prediction would come true. The fact Tuvok took this action of his own volition quietly proves how much he's come to like Neelix, which pays off their rocky journey from clashing colleagues to surprisingly close friends. Plus, Tuvok offering the Vulcan salute and uttering the immortal words, "Live long and proper," mirrors his actions from the beginning of the episode. Neelix asked Tuvok to recite the first words Vulcans spoke to humans upon first contact, which Russ's character begrudgingly did. So just as the words were intended as a first hello between Vulcans and their new allies, they also created an artful parallel by serving as a farewell between Tuvok and Neelix. Tuvok and Neelix are about as different as two Star Trek characters can be. Neelix wears his heart unapologetically on his sleeve, so it's impossible not to know what the eccentric Talaxian is feeling at any given moment. He's also openly passionate about pretty much everything. Inversely, Tuvok, like most Vulcans, is pretty much impossible to read. That being said, no one pushes Tuvok's buttons more or tests his commitment to remaining level-headed more than Neelix. Watching Tuvok's facial expression trying to ward off annoyance under Neelix's barrage of comments always makes me laugh. If they hadn't been forced together by Voyager's circumstances, it's likely they would never have even met, let alone get along. To watch them interact for the first several stages of their time together, it's pretty much impossible to imagine the two characters becoming friends. If they hadn't been forced together by Voyager's circumstances, it's likely they would never have even met, let alone got along. So, seeing Neelix gradually chip away at Tuvok's veneer is one of the most slow-burning arcs in all of Star Trek. Voyager, and seeing it all pay off with Tuvok's dance in Homestead is the perfect way to punctuate their dynamic. There's something quietly powerful about the way Star Trek, Voyager tells its stories, not just in the big battles or the grand speeches about the Prime Directive, but in the subtle, deeply human or Vulcan moments that slip past you until you're left unexpectedly emotional. Among them, one moment with Tuvok always stands out. It doesn't come with dramatic music or a sweeping monologue. It's quiet, understated, and devastatingly moving. Let's set the stage. Season 6, Episode 25, Unimatrix Zero, Part I, Voyager is in one of its most perilous situations yet, and tension is high. But before all the Borg-related chaos unfolds, there's a small, easily missed scene that hits like a punch to the heart. Tuvok, our stoic Vulcan tactical officer, is in sickbay. Something's wrong. He's experiencing symptoms he can no longer ignore: blackouts, disorientation, and signs of neurological degeneration. The diagnosis? A degenerative condition known as Ponar syndrome, essentially a death sentence without a cure. And even more tragically, Tuvok, ever the embodiment of control and discipline, finds himself losing that precious control piece by piece. The moment that brings the tear is when Tuvok, vulnerable and struggling, attempts to perform a basic Vulcan meditation in his quarters. His hands tremble. His breathing is ragged. The flame before him flickers in a cruel echo of his failing mental stability. He tries to suppress it. He chants the familiar mantras. But his mind, his very essence, is slipping. And then, in an act of silent desperation, Tuvok knocks over the meditation lamp, the flame extinguished. For a moment, he just stares at it. No words. No cries. Just silence. That's the tearjerker. For a character defined by logic and restraint, watching Tuvok silently crumble is profoundly affecting. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't ask for help. He simply faces his decline with a quiet dignity that is more heartbreaking than any overt expression of fear or sorrow. What makes this moment so powerful is not just what happens, but what it represents. Tuvok has always been a symbol of calm and chaos. The Rock, the voice of reason on a ship full of emotional humans, displaced Maquis, and one particularly erratic former Borg. He's not cold, far from it, but he is measured, disciplined, unshakable. So when he begins to falter, the audience feels it more acutely than if any other character had broken down. It's like watching your father cry for the first time. There's a sacred kind of pain in it, a crack in the universe that makes you feel suddenly small and mortal. Tim Russ, the actor behind Tuvok, deserves so much credit for how this scene is portrayed. He never overplays it. He lets the silence and subtle expressions do the talking. A slight widening of the eyes, a twitch of the jaw, a rigidness in posture that gives way to a slow slump. There are no melodramatics here. Just a man coming to terms with a reality he cannot control. It's also a rare depiction of disability and illness in Star Trek, a future that often prides itself on medical marvels and miraculous cures. But here the writers made a bold choice. Let the condition be real and let Tuvok's struggle be visible. In doing so, they gave us one of the most humane depictions of vulnerability in the franchise. Later in the series, Tuvok's condition is managed, but the memory of that meditation scene lingers. It reminds us that even in a universe of warp drives and transporter beams, there are battles that can't be won with phasers or technobabble. Sometimes, the most courageous act is simply enduring. For longtime Voyager fans, this moment also echoes back to Tuvok's complex relationships aboard the ship. His friendship with Captain Janeway, his mentorship of Harry Kim, and even his tenuous but ultimately respectful bond with the holographic doctor all take on new meaning in light of his illness. When these characters later rally around him, you realize just how deeply integrated Tuvok is into the emotional backbone of Voyager. What brings the tear, ultimately, is the sheer humanity of it. In a franchise built on hope and progress, Voyager never shies away from pain and struggle. And Tuvok, logical, unflappable Tuvok, becomes a quiet vessel for that truth. His breakdown isn't a spectacle. It's a mirror held up to every viewer who's ever faced loss, illness, or the betrayal of their own body. It's also a testament to Voyager's strength as a series. Critics often overlook it compared to The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine, but moments like this prove its emotional depth. The show didn't need epic space battles to be compelling, though it had plenty. Sometimes, all it needed was a Vulcan, a flame, and silence. So yes, this Tuvok moment always brings a tear to my eye. Not because it's flashy or loud, but because it's real. It reminds me that even the most logical minds can feel fear. That even the strongest among us can break. And that sometimes the quietest scenes speak the loudest truths.